Welcome to Just Curious Media. This is Into the Mystic, and I'm Jason Connell. On the show today, I'm joined by special guest, Peter Filardi. Peter, thanks for
Hey,
joining us.
Jason. Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great. I gotta say, your name came up when I first moved to New England and went to the Mistick Film Festival. And I actually got involved last year as like emceeing the awards. And they're like, oh, you gotta meet the Filardi brothers. And I'm like, wait a second, is that the guy that did Flatliners and The Craft? And so I was really impressed and super excited to meet you. Didn't meet you. Our paths just did not intersect.
Right.
But when the podcast came about, we launched the Into the Mystic podcast, a collaboration with Just Curious Media and the Mistick Film Festival. Shireen Anderson said, oh, we got to get Peter on. And here we are. So I'm just totally excited to delve into your career and get to know you better.
Well, maybe it was a surprise for you. You know, you were coming from Los Angeles and the
Yeah.
city guy, and you come to this quaint little small town, kind of a one street, one horse town. And oh, there's actually some filmmakers who've come from here. So I can see that. It was kind of a rarity.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I was like, oh, you got to meet this guy. And I'm thinking, I know, but I just was in LA. And then I look at your credits. I was like, oh, no, there's some legit people in New England, I got to say. So, I mean, I know New York, but I don't know much about these seaside towns. I mean, I would visit New England and drive. Well, first of all, you can drive the whole thing in a few hours. And I'm used to being in California where it's a long trek to get to Northern California.
Sure.
And then I'm like, wait a second, there's so much here because I did not grow up on this coast, but just blown away. But Peter, you did. And I want to delve into that. But first, I do have to mention our sponsors. We're lucky enough to be a young podcast with sponsors, which is great. So let me just give a shout out because you'll probably recognize these two. They're both in Mistick. And first being the Old Mistick Village.
Oh, yeah.
The Old Mistick Village, which is spelled a little different than Mistick the town. It has the old school Mistick, which I love when I see that, like on their billboard. But
Yep.
they're also having us advertise something coming up very soon, and it's the Taste of Mistick, as it's returning to the Old Mistick Village from September 8th through the 10th. So friends and family, be sure to join the unbelievable 50th anniversary event featuring tastings from over 20 restaurants, a beer tent, live bands all weekend. So go to oldmysticvillage.com and click on events. So that's amazing. Peter, you going to go to the 50th anniversary?
I absolutely will. It's the Regan family built the Mystic Village back in the day, and I can remember 50 years ago uh, because Joyce Regan and her father, and then Sean Regan and Joe Regan, they all got involved and built this amazing outdoor shopping experience place, and just drew so many people to Mystic. I mean, Mystic went really from being such a small town with just the seaport to being the number one tourist destination in Connecticut. So, hats off to the Regan family and the Mystic Village. It's an awesome place to spend a day.
That's awesome. Well, it's funny. I discovered Mistick a few years ago on one of my first dates with my girlfriend, which is great. But we went to Mistick Pizza. That was on my radar for obvious reasons, which we'll delve into. But it took me a good 6 months. Someone said, oh, you got to go check out the village because it's a whole other thing, like the downtown and the village. So what was the village before the village? What was there?
A field. It used to just be a big open field, and every year the Mystic Lions Club would have a beer festival there. And
Was it in
they would,
October?
oh yeah, and it would just be a balls out crazy party. And they would litter the field with plastic cups and vomit, and that was it.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, I love what it is now. It is gorgeous. It's this quaint little thing, and it looks much older than 50 years in a good way, like in a good way,
Right.
like it's been there, timeless. And another quick shout out, because right there, I don't know if it's part of Mystic Village or just adjacent, but Mystic Aquarium. They're another one of our sponsors, an incredible aquarium,
Oh yeah.
highly ranked in the world and just beautiful. All these new exhibits. So check out mysticaquarium.org. Was that there? When did that come about? Do you remember when the aquarium came in town?
I believe that came shortly after the Mystic Village.
Okay.
and my that of course is a huge attraction as well. It's great. They have great shows with, not only the seals and the dolphins, but they have orcas.
Yeah. Right.
They have a white whale, and they do a lot of field work in conjunction with Avery Point University.
Yeah.
A lot of marine biology stuff. So they're a serious
Yep.
aquarium. More than just a tourist attraction. I mean, it's a real learning center. And my younger brother, who's a screenwriter, actually worked there when he was a kid,
Oh
taking
my
tickets.
gosh. Really?
Yeah, you
That's
would go
awesome.
in, you go into any aquarium and it's dark and they have black lights on, and they would stamp your hand with a black light
Oh yeah.
stamp that said, your parents had paid. So when the kids would come up, he would typically take the stamp and try to stamp the little kids' foreheads.
Oh my
So then when they
gosh.
would walk inside the aquarium,
Just
it'd be like
boom.
paid right on the center of their
That's
forehead.
great.
It's just all these little
Oh, of
goofy things
course.
locals do to tourists.
Oh, I want to show the logos too. There is the Old Mystic Village promoting the Taste of Mystic. Amazing. And there's the Mystic Aquarium. So they're both there. I'll leave this one up. I'll leave our prize sponsor up for a bit here. So, Peter, growing up in Mystic, and you've already explained how the Old Mystic Village came about on your watch being there, but there's also a movie theater there because it's part of the Mystic Film Festival. We screen at the Mystic Luxury Cinemas. Being who you are in the film industry, which we're going to get into in your career and some of your pillar achievements, but what were some memorable, there had to be memorable screenings that you went to as a kid or as an adult, things that just stood out? Because that had to be, I'm just guessing, your theater of choice growing
Oh
up.
yeah, absolutely. It was really the only theater in our town, and it was owned and operated by uh, the current owner is named Bill Doherty, and his dad ran it,
Nice.
and it was his theater. And I would go when I was a kid. This was before cable TV. This was before VHS and
Yep.
DVD, and so you would read about a film in Time magazine that sounded. This is in the '70s. Intriguing. It sounded great. It might be Deliverance or The Godfather
Oh
or
my
something like that.
gosh. Yes.
And you would either have to wait for it to come through your town, or if you had missed it and they were writing about it in retrospect, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
Until
Yeah.
maybe it reran on Channel
Right.
56, some UHF channel someday.
Right.
So you were in this horrible situation where you would be teased, by these reviews and this talk of great films and that you couldn't get to, you couldn't see. So uh, very early on, I began talking my father into taking me to see the R-rated films of the '70s that were coming out, and so I would go to Mystic Village
Oh,
Cinema to see. He took me to see
like
Godfather
Chinatown,
2,
Godfather, Godfather Part 2.
Deliverance, um, any horror stuff. Even I and um, and if I couldn't see the film, I would read the novel.
Right. Yeah.
Because it was the only way to get the story. So I ended up reading books like The Godfather, Deliverance, even genre stuff like Reincarnation of Peter Proud, I
Wow.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's
Yeah.
Nest. I would read all these books in anticipation of the movie, hopefully rolling through our town. Um, but I also would whenever possible. I probably at the Mystic Cinemas once a week, and often my father or mother would have to walk up with me to the window because I was under 17, and would
Yeah.
have to tell Mr. Doherty that it was okay for me to go in and watch this thing. And
Man, that is awesome.
so it was a fundamental, it just really planted the seed and fed the passion of
Yeah.
storytelling in cinema. Yeah,
Well,
so it
that
was a
was
great.
the
Great theater.
golden age too. I mean, you're seeing the movies. Like I saw all those movies not in the theater. I'm not probably that much younger than you, but I missed that wasn't my window, right? I was seeing movies in the theater in the early '80s into the mid '80s. So these I caught up with later, and then you just realize what an amazing treat we had. Actually, I honored Vilmo Zsigmond, rest in peace, at
Oh
my
yeah.
festival in LA before he passed away. So he, of course, was a DP of not just Close Encounters, but Deliverance and many other movies. So I'm meeting these legends later in life. But we go back and reflect, and yeah, that was that sweet spot where we had these darker endings, these tragic endings, these great films. So that's amazing. But you were going already seeking that out, Peter. So did you know at a young age, like, this is my calling? I've got to be in this lane.
Not at all.
Okay.
Because I grew up in such a small town and I came from a family that wasn't in the industry in any way. I had no idea that that world was even available to
Yeah. Right.
me or anybody else. It was just fun,
Yeah.
entertainment, great, a passion. But no, I had no idea. I ended up going to college at Boston University as an English major. And the first week or so, I met a student, another guy on the street who was there, and he told me he was there studying film. And I think my jaw probably dropped. I was like,
Well, you
"You're
can do
here?
that?
Yeah, wait, a minute, you're here studying how to make movies." And he was like, "Yeah." And it was mind blowing. And
Yeah.
I began the steps, to 2 years later transfer into the communications slash film department there.
Wow. But it all fed from this early interest and love. And these great movies, it was no accident. You were seeing incredible movies that we just don't see at that rate, those types of movies anymore.
Yeah, I can remember seeing French Connection
Yeah.
on the big screen, all of them when they first came out. And I remember even in the 80s um, telling my fellow film students, boy, we really were in a great era
You
of
recognized it.
cinema. Yeah,
Wow.
I really did. We had moved into sort of I like Star Wars and all that stuff, but
Sure.
I loved that grittier, those 70s dramas, and
Yeah.
that's
I'm with you on that, Peter. Like, I love Jaws and what that did to the industry. In fact, it's probably my favorite movie because just what it meant to me, understanding movie making. But going back, I'll watch Being There anytime it's on. I'll watch Midnight Cowboy, which is not 70s, I guess it's 69. But just because there's just something about those that just pull you in. The characters, the richness. They weren't going for the fluff endings. But I think you can love both. And there are some purists that wouldn't, but I definitely am both camps.
I
But
am too.
but
I
I
am.
love that you recognize it. It's almost like now people are like, we're in this renaissance with TV. Okay, maybe. I think so. It's as good as I can recall. But you recognize it in the 70s like, guys, hey, there's something going on here. So
Yeah,
I love that. It's really great.
yeah. And it's funny I was in junior high and a friend's sister worked at the Mystic Village Cinema.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I said, is there any way she can get posters?
Yeah.
Any way she can get me these, and he asked her, and finally she started coming through with one sheets for me, and I would have to pay him like
Yeah.
$2 or $3 for a one sheet, and then I would hang them up in this old barn behind our house where we had a pool table, and
Oh,
so
nice.
we would, be shooting pool and sneaking beers, under the watchful gaze. I had Jaws.
Oh,
You mentioned Jaws.
original Prince,
Yeah,
Peter. That's
yeah.
amazing.
I had Man with a Golden Gun.
Oh,
Uh, whatever he could get. I even had
Kramer versus Kramer. Whatever.
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
take it all.
I did. I had that Zeppelin. What was the Zeppelin? The Hindenburg.
Oh, yeah, the
Had like George
Hindenburg.
C. Scott and like 25 celebrities in it.
Wow.
Anyway, I had these movie posters hanging up, and I never made the connection, but I look back now, and I think that's how it plays out with a lot of people in life. You can
Yeah.
see where you end up, and then, oh, now I see how I got here.
That's so true. I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, actually, before I moved to Los Angeles. That's where I was born, and I didn't think about movies other than you. Like, this is not attainable, but I'm going to watch Jaws again or Close Encounters on HBO because I was like 8, 9, 10, just soaking it up, right? Star Wars. Even Elephant Man would come on. I always had HBO on repeat, like great movie and just like popcorn movie. And then as I got old, well, at some point in time in my like preteen, Francis Ford Coppola comes to town and makes The Outsiders and Rumblefish. And that's when I was like, wait a second, that you make movie? Like, it just kind of, I had to like process that. I didn't understand it. Like, and the cast of these movies was ridiculous, and they were all over town, and it was all this hubbub. And that probably planted a seed. Like
Right.
you, like, oh yeah, I like whatever this is. I really like it. I like Behind the Curtain. And then I did get a job at a movie theater in high school and in college. So it's like, it just kind of pushes you that way. Who knows what it's going to be other than just an interest? But at some point, it became a career
So,
for you.
so those films were shot in Tulsa?
Those two were back to back because S.E. Hinton, the writer, actually a female,
Sure.
wrote the novels and did Tex. And actually, they filmed Tex first, but it wasn't Coppola, which was Matt Dillon, Emilio Estevez, Meg Tilly. So, yeah, all these happened. I was like 11, 12, going to the theater. Like, you're recognizing your own hometown on the big screen. I mean, it blows your mind as a youth.
That's
Much
right.
like when Mystic Pizza comes out. I mean, that's like 87 getting shot, comes out in 88. I don't know where you at. I'm not sure where you are on space and time, but was that something to you in your hometown? Here comes a movie that, hey, love it or hate it. I've always loved it for what it is, but
I love it.
good. Okay.
I love
So,
it. Yeah.
and what did that mean? Did that like, wow, yeah, I'm proud of that. That's my hometown on the screen there.
I was in LA by then.
Okay.
I think I had done an episode for MacGyver, and
Yeah, I read that.
I was just sort of, getting going. I don't know if I don't think I had done Flatliners by then, but I remember seeing my hometown, and I was like, wow, the film is really good. The
Yep.
characters are great, and somebody beat me to telling a story about my hometown, before,
Yeah, yeah, there's that.
and I was like, and it just shows you sometimes it takes an outsider, to see something
That's
fresh,
right.
something,
Yeah.
and but no, I was very proud of it. My sixth grade teacher, Mr. Zazelka, can be seen dancing in there, and a
Oh,
lot of
really?
quite a few of the extras, and all the locations, as you say.
Yeah. Also in
So,
Stonington. A lot of Stonington in that movie. But
that's,
when I came in town, I was like, oh, yeah, it cheats here, does this, does that. Actually written by Amy Holden Jones, who I haven't met yet. I haven't had the pleasure. But her her widowed husband, or she's a widow now, but her late husband, I got to know, Michael Chapman, the famous
oh,
DP,
oh,
who's
I
just
didn't know he was
I
married to him.
married
Oh,
to her. I met him at my festival in Los Angeles. We played the Jaws documentary, The Shark is Still Working, and had a lot of cast and crew out. So here I am, a fanboy, meeting Chapman, who, oh my, his credits, I could just go on forever,
oh yeah,
as you know.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, that was his wife, and she wrote it. Didn't direct it, wanted to direct it. It was directed by a man. I forget his name off the top of my head, but great movie. Young Matt Damon, Julia Roberts before she gets Pretty Woman, but it holds up. I watched it just recently. Like, that's actually a well-told movie. It really is, for beat by beat. So Peter, did that? I know you were in Los Angeles then, but your family was probably still out here, I'm assuming. But
Oh yeah.
did Mystic Pizza just blow up after that? Like, what was Mystic Pizza before the movie came out?
Well, first, when I was a kid in the 70s, Mystic Pizza was Ted's Pizza, and it's where all the Vietnam vets used to hang out on
Wow.
stools. And I mean, it was rundown, kind of a rundown pizza joint, and they served good
Wow.
greasy pizza, and we used to go down there.
Okay.
But then the Zalepos family,
Yeah.
who bought Ted's and changed it to Mystic Pizza, and I'm sure it was going along quite fine. They made a really good pizza. Um, but that movie came and as you can imagine, just absolutely blew the place up. I
Yeah, the
mean,
restaurant grew, right? Like, it had to have grown.
oh yeah, it grew. It became 2 stories, and it took over the adjacent laundromat.
Oh,
And
okay.
Chris and John Zalepos worked with their mother and father, and they were selling T-shirts, and the dad was brilliant because he he said, yeah, you can use the name, but I guess I still own it, or I still own the name.
Okay, the
I'm not
license.
selling
Yeah,
you the name,
the trademark.
and the
Yeah,
trademark, right? My logo. So
interesting.
he he was able to do T-shirts, merchandise, and then he was also able later. His son Chris came up with the idea to franchise it as a frozen pizza
Yeah,
because
I've
they.
tried the frozen pizza because I found it in New England. It's
Yep,
great.
yep,
So
yep.
that's a whole
Yeah,
other
it's great.
thing. And
And
it does
so
look like the movie. You're right. The logo's the same, so I didn't know that that's their logo. They're not paying the movie. The movie's paying
that's
them.
right. That's right.
So,
So it was just,
wow.
just a real smart little long-term move and vision by them, and and they're
Wow.
just great. They're a great family. It's lovely that it happened for them.
Well, I
Yeah,
got to say, the smartest thing they did was changing it from Ted's. No offense, Ted. No offense. But that is a great name, Mystic Pizza. It's just
yeah,
sells
yeah.
itself.
It kind of flows.
Yeah. So before you moved to LA, and I did read about your MacGyver. I almost said MacGruber. Sorry, but your MacGyver episode, which is awesome. I used to
That's awesome.
love, I used to love MacGyver and MacGruber. But you're growing up in New England. You're going to English. You're studying English, and then you're switching to film. Also on the East Coast, up in Maine, is one Stephen King. And knowing your sensibilities, was he a big influence on you?
Oh, for sure, for sure. Um, I know when I was 12, I still remember I was 12, and my grandmother was part of some, I think it was Reader's Digest or Publishers something book club, and they would send you a hard copy novel every
Yeah.
month, kind of like the old Columbia Record Club.
Right. Yeah.
And she ended up dropping Salem's Lot on me when I was 12 and saying, I
Wow.
think you would like this one. And I started reading, and it's set in a town very much like my own, with
Yeah.
characters very much like those that populate my reality, with an infusion of vampires. And I was
Wow.
um, terrified, blown away, delighted. I was just, I was awestruck. That book really
Do you
that was
have
a.
the Salem's Lot poster somewhere, Peter, in your house? I mean, it sounds like that needs to be framed
It
somewhere.
should. I don't, but
I mean, more the book. I guess the book is what spoke to you,
yeah,
not the
I still
movie.
have
But
the old book.
that one you got, the one that
Yeah,
she gave you.
yeah,
Oh, now that's cool. And
yeah.
it's funny with Stephen King, and I was hugely influenced too, although I'm not a writer, as such as yourself, and your sensibility speaks to that. But reading Pet Cemetery, Carrie, Cujo, The Body, I was just enthralled. I didn't even read that much, but I would read Stephen King at like 11, 12, 13, 14. And then I got older and started seeing the movies. And of course, you could say, oh, the bad and the good. Well, I mean, The Shining, Shawshank Redemption, Stand By Me, Christine, Misery. He also spawned some great movies,
Yeah.
right? Because his work's
Oh,
so powerful. What's your
he's
favorite?
just,
Oh,
well, I
sorry.
think, oh, my favorite, well, I'll tell you, one of them is Misery. Um,
Totally.
I
It's
love Misery.
brilliant.
I just love the characters. I love the dynamics. There's a lot to love about that film.
Yeah.
Um, you
Very
know,
claustrophobic, too. I like those
yeah,
types of
yeah.
movies, you know?
Of course, I mean, you can go down the list. My God, Shawshank, Shining, they're all just great. Stand By Me was brilliant.
Yeah.
Rob Reiner, isn't it funny? You don't think of him as a horror director, but boy, he really knows how to
Yeah.
do Stephen King well. I think maybe because he just pays equal attention to the great characters and the
Yeah.
dynamics that Mr. King creates. He's really a master of just creating. What would The Shining be if Danny didn't have ESP? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'd be a family moves into a haunted hotel and
Yeah.
then
Then
goes
what? Yeah.
here. And the same stuff could sort of happen,
Right.
but
Right.
it wouldn't be the same without the psychic kid.
Yeah. Oh,
You know,
absolutely. Yeah.
he sees the jeopardy. He knows. So now it's like it just amps it up. You know,
Absolutely.
it
And,
turns
and I love that Scatman can communicate with him and recognizes it in him. And just
right.
those the devices. Yeah,
Right.
another claustrophobic movie. I just say that because it's like I feel stuck, but I'm intrigued, and I'm
Yeah.
going. And of course, Kubrick brings the visuals. It's
Right.
like some people like the TV version, which whatever. I just love the original, the Kubrick
Yeah.
masterpiece.
I mean, I, I know Stephen King
Yeah, he's
preferred, the other one.
yeah,
Um, and I respect that, I for sure. I just think they're both different. It's so funny. It's just I guess it's a homage to the story itself that it can be told in different ways,
yeah,
still
yeah.
just be great. It's like having you write an amazing tune and people do different covers of it,
Right.
and,
Yeah,
and, and they can be all great.
that's very true. Good point. So, what intrigued you to, because a couple of your bigger movies they deal with supernatural or witchcraft? Like, was that
Right.
always something kind of growing up in a seaside town? Was that part of it? Salem's Lot, that early reading, is that what kind of drew you in?
It could be. I think it could be. I think I've always just liked the idea of there being an extra element of magic to the reality around us. It
Yeah,
just makes life a little more interesting.
yeah.
Um,
Like
and
Danny, that's why you identify
yeah,
with.
there you go. It's just, just a little wrinkle of something, a little shimmer, something.
I like that. Yeah.
Um,
It's comforting to you, not like scary or off-putting. It's like, no, no, there's something.
no,
It's
it's good.
magic, as you say. I like that.
Yeah. And bad things can happen, certainly, and bad
Sure.
creatures, this and that. But it is kind of oddly comforting, like to think that there's more than what we know,
Yeah.
at work. Yeah.
So, what led to the events of you writing Flatliners? Sometimes writers are commissioned or they do it on spec, and you had just done, like you said, that one episode of MacGyver, that's a big deal. That was a hit show, huge show at
Yeah.
the time. So you get this gig, which I'm sure that's a gig. Hey, you want to be a writer? That had to be like, I've arrived. I'm in LA, and now I got this. So maybe talk us through that experience.
Um, well, it's interesting I'm not sure how the industry exactly works today, and it never works the same for everyone.
Sure.
But trying to break into the industry as a screenwriter is usually a pretty good way to try to do it. It doesn't cost a lot of money. You can do it
Right.
on your own and your own time. And the trick is getting whatever you write in front of the right eyes at the right time. Um, for me, the MacGyver was interesting because I did have an agent by then, and it's funny. People always ask me, young writers, how do you get an agent? How do I get a manager? And I had no idea, and I told my problem to my father, who was in the beer business,
Oh,
and
really?
yeah, and he said, "Well, who do these agents pay attention to? Who do they listen to?" And I said, "Producers." And he said, "Well, do you know any producers?" And I said, "No." And I said, "But I do know a girl who's a secretary for a producer." And so he said, "Well, talk to her." So I talked to her. She was a friend from college. She was working as a secretary. Spoke to her producer boss and said, "Hey, I have a friend who's a screenwriter. Do you know any agents he can submit to?" And he said, "Is he any good? Have you read his stuff?" And she lied. She said, "Yeah." And he said, "Is he any good?" "Oh, yeah, yeah, he's great." Well, tell him to call this agent, Scott Penny, and he can use my name. So I was able to call this agent
Oh,
and speak to his secretary and say, "Hi, my name is blah blah Peter Filardi. Producer Joel Friedman suggested I call. I'm looking for Penny." Now all of a sudden you get a call back, and the guy is
yeah.
aggravated. Of course, he's like, "God damn it!" But he sort of has to return the call,
Right. Yeah.
and so he does. And he says, "I'll read a couple pages. If I like it, we'll talk. If I don't, we're done. Good luck." And I sent him two spec Miami Vice scripts that I'd written. Because
Wow.
I used to watch that show.
Another
So
hit show, Michael Mann. Yeah, huge show.
but I hadn't written, these are not sold. These were
No,
just
yeah, yeah.
specs.
Yeah, exactly.
So he
Exactly.
read them, liked them, and they signed me to a hip pocket deal with a junior agent at the agency.
Okay.
And so that was the first step, and then nothing happened, and then eventually I wrote a spec MacGyver, just to do something, because I said, well, there's a show that I kind of can relate to, a small town sensibility type of character.
Yeah.
Maybe I can put my own spin on it. And I read an interview in a little magazine called the Hollywood Newsletter, which probably had a circulation of about 230. And they had interviewed the story editor of MacGyver up in Canada, who seemed like a really pretty decent guy. So I reached out to him, and I said, hey, I read your... I looked him up, his name, got his number. I read your interview in that little newsletter. It was really a great interview. Look, I wrote this spec MacGyver. Can you just take a look at it and tell me if you think it's a good sample of my work? Not buy it, just tell me if you think it's worthwhile for me to show around town and try to get some. And he said, all right, put it in the pouch over at Paramount, and I'll take a look at it.
So old school. I love it.
Yeah,
Put it in the
so I had
pouch. Print it out.
Yeah. I had a little Suzuki motorcycle back then. I rode over to Paramount, put it in the pouch.
I love
and
it.
Went up to Vancouver that night probably
Oh my God.
with the other stuff, everybody. And I got a call like 3 days later. The guy's like, hey, I read your script. I really liked it. Good job. Good luck to you. And I was like, great. Thank you so much. That's all the vote of confidence I need to keep doing this crazy thing. I'm trying.
Yeah.
And another day later, he said, hey, we just bought your script. Can you fly up to Vancouver tomorrow for the rewrites? We're going to shoot it.
Oh my gosh.
So what happened, I guess, one of the writing producers had turned in a script, and the exec producer wasn't happy with it, thought it needed a lot of work. And then he's like, now what are we going to do?
Go to the pouch. Okay. Here we go.
The story editor said, hey, I just happened to read this script this kid sent up from LA. It's actually pretty tight. And so the guy said, let me read it. And he read it. He goes, we're doing this one.
Wow.
Fate. It's a capricious... That's why I say there's no one way.
No.
But writing's a good way. But I do advise people looking for management, try to think of the producers and work backwards.
Right.
I think that was
Absolutely.
a great...
Because that would never have happened had you just sat around and maybe wrote another show. But you did it. You took action. It works. But you had the goods, Peter. Obviously, the script resonated. It fit the MacGyver, ethos. So they shoot it. And you're probably like, oh, I have arrived. I mean, I've had these moments in my career too. It's like, oh, now I'm arrived now. So you're there, you're on set, you're doing rewrites. So to that springboard, how does Flatliners then come next?
Well, we went on strike.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
1987, 88. Yeah, we went on strike. So right after that episode, everything shut down. Right, I got in the guild, and the guild went on strike.
Oh my gosh!
And then when the strike ended, the producer, he really it's a long story, and there's some real interesting wrinkles that I'm not going to get into. But
sure,
he didn't want to do another one with me.
Okay.
And it wasn't for the bad writing. It was something else. So I was like, shit, there goes my TV career.
Yeah.
But I had the idea for Flatliners for some time.
Really, the whole concept that was kind of flushed out in your head.
Most of it. I knew what it was. I knew that it was, but I didn't feel also for a while good enough to write it, to execute it.
Right.
but I knew it was, these kids medical students who kill themselves and explore death and come back. But it wasn't until I got, oh, they bring back
something else.
these sins, these guilts that they feel, these sins with them. That was the hook.
Right.
So until I had the hook, I didn't have it. So I said, well, TV's done. So I wrote that on spec, gave it to my agent, who had never sold a movie. They had just sold some TV stuff. They were a small agency. And they really liked it. And they put it out there. And, within a week or two, we had a bunch of bidders and we sold it.
Wow.
Yeah. And then
So what year was this? 88, 89?
Yeah, it would have been like 88, 89.
Okay.
Because we went into production so fast. I mean,
wow.
It was, people said, oh, you don't realize how rare this is. But for some reason, above my pay grade, either Columbia wanted to make the movie right away, wanted to make a movie right away with Michael Douglas, maybe because of
he produced, right?
You never really know what
it was.
The big money, the macro of it all. But I think I sold the thing. I don't know. I mean, I was meeting with Joel Schumacher and working on rewrites within like a week.
This is how things work for you, Peter. MacGyver, get to Canada.
Really fast.
Yeah. Or they don't. I'm going to bring up the poster here because this movie, I saw it in the theater. I loved it. It was lightning in a bottle. We hadn't seen anything like it, right? I don't recall anything like it at the time. And to be clear, as you mentioned, it comes out in 1990, Flatliners. Michael Douglas produces. Joel Schumacher, who, if you don't know the name, St. Elmo's Fire, The Lost Boys, Falling Down, an iconic director. And Michael Douglas, no slouch himself as a producer, but obviously an incredible actor, and also in Falling Down. But you write this. It's about 5 medical students who experiment with near-death experiences until the dark consequences of past tragedies begin to jeopardize their lives. And it has this cast that's just bubbling over and about to explode. You have Julia Roberts from Mystic Pizza, Kiefer Sutherland, Kevin Bacon, William Baldwin, and Oliver Platt. And it just hit at the right time. I don't even know what it did at the box office. I just know everybody was talking about it, Peter.
I think it was... For me, I think it captured the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
It really was. People my age, it's pretty much said in the film in one scene. We kind of grew up in the shadow of the baby boomers.
Right.
We didn't really have our own identity so much. They had television shows like 30-something. They rode BMWs. They were the yuppies. Right. And we were in the shadow of all that, and we used to kind of joke about ourselves as yuffies. We were young urban failures. We were like this kind of we were like half a step behind. And so we didn't have all of that. Everything wasn't about us. And so when I was looking for, and so I know there's a scene where, Oliver Platt says, we finally found our frontier, the West has been explored, space has been done, everything, all these things have been, the ocean, everything's been done, but we finally found our frontier, which is death.
Yeah.
Finally something to upstage those fucking baby boomers. And that's really, like Michael Douglas said to me, I was reading the script and I didn't really know, what this is about. Why would they do this? Until I hit that line.
Yeah.
And he said, then it all clicked and I got why they would do this. Because people used to say to me, Joel Schumacher, he was a bit older than me. At the time, I was 20... 5 or something, 6, 20, something like that. And he would say...
Still too young for 30-something, though.
Yeah, still too young for that. And he would say, why would they do this? And I would say, why wouldn't they?
Right, yeah.
that was my attitude. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is a chance. This is all the marbles, man. This is what philosophy and religion, everybody bumps up against the wall of inexperience, and they ask you to take the leap of faith, but everybody fails,
Yeah.
everybody hits that wall. And now these guys, we have the opportunity
Yeah.
to really come back with the goods. And I was like, my God, who wouldn't do it?
Yeah.
So that was my attitude. And I
Oh,
don't
that's
know, people,
brilliant.
people, people dug it. People
Yeah.
dug it.
So, I mean, this was big. And I'm sure this puts you on a lot of radars. And did this start to be like, hey, we want you to write this? Were you throwing a lot of options? Like, we want this, we're looking for the writer. Or was it equally hard to get the next thing going?
Well, it's funny. They always say the second one's harder than the first one in
Right.
music.
Right.
Second album or second,
And the follow-up act.
yeah, the follow up, and that's how I felt too.
Okay.
It was harder for me because
Because the stakes
uh,
were higher, right? And you're
stakes
up
are
here now.
high.
Yeah.
Stakes are high. Everybody's looking at you. Who
Hmm.
is this kid? Is he the next Stephen King? How good is he? So I just felt a lot of that. Even if it wasn't there, I felt it. So
Sure.
there were a lot of opportunities and a lot of offers, but I kept refusing them.
Did you?
I think I was too scared. As a small town kid from a small town, I was still pretty young, and I was scared to take an assignment and fail.
Right. Sure.
So so I, buried my head in the sand and wrote on spec like I had always done. And and eventually, like 2 years later, I wrote basically the screenplay, which would later become I optioned a true life story, which would become Ricky Six. It was kind of the rise and fall of a teen Satanist
Okay.
that I eventually made. But I worked on that, and then eventually producer Doug Wick met with me, and he said, I want to do something about either a haunted house or witches. And I was like, and he was just a really cool guy and a nice guy, and we connected. And I said, it's funny you talk about witches because, I've been writing about this teen Satanist, and I had been reading
Hmm.
about Satanism and witchcraft, and I had been going to the magic shops in West Hollywood, and I had been going behind the black curtain and hanging out with these types of people.
Yeah, you've been researching. You've been
I
looking
had
at it. Yeah.
I had been researching, so I started just riffing on all cool stuff that we could do and this and that, and just saying to him, that this isn't Lost Boy. What you're talking about, if we're gonna go with young people in high school or young in
Hmm.
this, it's not Lost Boys. It's not like they're the overlords of their school, because historically magic is
Hmm.
the weapon of the underclass.
Right.
It's not the people who, were in the king's court or had an army or had the church behind them. They're the heathens, the people of the heath who have nothing. They have no advocates. So as a last resort, they turn to magic.
Right. Right.
And magic only works if you have, not only desire and knowledge, but a need.
Right.
And so it springs from like a real emotional need. And he was like, and then, we talked about times with like mushrooms and different things where we felt we had experienced real magic.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly. Yeah.
And from that came the craft. We said, he gave me like the confidence and said, you know what, yes. He just said yes, yes, yes. Let's try it. And so I felt like, okay, I got to take an assignment. I got to like work with people and give it a go. And so I wrote the craft, with him and his guidance, and then
Wow.
it was all based on I picked the brain of every woman in my life and read
Right. Yeah.
great great books like The Goddess in Every Woman,
Hmm.
um, The Body Myth, all sorts of stuff. and just really got into it. And I had felt sort of like, on the outside in high school.
Sure, sure.
I wasn't really a big fan of high school, so it was easy for me, and those wounds or those feelings were still fresh
Sure.
enough. They were still only 8 or 10 years old, so I still remembered and felt. And so I could really, in a way, tap into that handily. And I was really happy with it. The studio really liked it. And they wanted me to change the end because the original ending was different. 3 of the girls died and 1 didn't.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was a bit darker.
And no one dies in The Craft
Yeah,
at the end.
yeah.
So.
The original ending was a bit darker. And,
By the way, I love the movie. I was going to do one last thing about Flatliners, but maybe I'll circle back around because I love segueing into The Craft. Or maybe I'll just do it really quickly. And you don't have to really speak to it, but I'm shocked. And the studios were very different back then with Flatliners. By the way, great title. Flatliners says it all. It's simple. It's succinct. It's great. But this day and age, there would have been Flatliners 2 would have got into production so fast. They would have done something, but it was a different time, and you had a hit and whatever, and they didn't know. There wasn't a lot of sequels coming out at that point in time. But there was a remake many years later in 2017, not that long ago, and I happened to be good friends with the writer, which is just bizarre. So when your name came up, I was like, wait a second, Ben Ripley's a good friend of mine, also a very good writer.
I love Ben Ripley.
Yeah, do you know Ben? Personally?
I met Ben. Yeah, we spoke on the phone quite a bit when he was working on it.
Yeah.
And he sent me his draft, and then we met and had coffee when I went out to LA. And he's a great dude. He's
really
a solid citizen, really really good guy. And I was, I can't say anything but great stuff about him. And I thought the director did a great job. I think it was probably a tough assignment,
Right, yeah.
But who knows? There's so many variables in any given film, and they all have to hit, for it to take off. But
well, not to derail from The Craft, but Ben actually wrote me last night and said, speaking to you and your version of Flatliners, his was the classic version. Tell him hello from me. So I was like, they had to have met and collaborated in some respect. So
I'm a big fan of his,
Yeah.
and his, he took the assignment, but his original stuff, source code and stuff.
Source code, yeah.
He's a powerhouse.
Yeah.
He's a really good dude, and that's, I have to say, that's one of the great things about being in this industry. And even when I'm not in the industry, if I'm on strike or here in Connecticut, I'm trying to put together shorts just to meet people who have that sense, the creative sensibility. I love surrounding myself with people like that. And so say hi to him for me.
I will. I'll do it right now. Let's do it real time. No, I absolutely will. So back to The Craft, because this, let me bring up the poster here. There it is, an iconic poster. And as you spoke to, you were doing this research, which I didn't know. This is so fascinating for me, Peter. Like, you're doing research for this other project, but then this producer and you guys start talking, and then it leads to this. And what I thought, so here, for those who don't know, The Craft comes out in 1996. Here's the synopsis, and I want to give some tidbits. But a newcomer to a Catholic prep high school falls in love with the trio of outcast teenage girls who practice witchcraft, and they all soon conjure up various spells and curses against those who anger them, and maybe against each other. But what was interesting to me, Peter, is watching this movie then and now. I watched it last week. It's like, this movie still holds up. But at the time it comes out, you only have movies like Thelma and Louise in 91 and A League of Their Own in 92, both with Gina Davis, but female leads. This was unique for the time, and not to mention, they're all relatively unknowns at this time.
Yeah.
So I'm sure studios were like, we don't know, but you also had this Flatliners behind you, which couldn't have hurt, and this producer. But I just thought it was so unique. It went against the norm. You didn't just get all these big. I mean, there's really no stars in the movie. No offense to them, but
Right.
and it works. It works to this day. So that's a credit to you guys.
Well, thank you. And a credit to the cast, and a credit
Of course.
a ton of credit to the whole team. You know, Andy Fleming did a
Yeah.
fabulous job. Really, yeah. I mean, he brought all this great style and humor, and, you know.
Yeah, it is really funny. It
It
captures
is.
those humorous moments when you need them. It has a cool factor to it. The music's good because that was a time a little needle drop here. It's like, wow, The Cure right here, you're in.
Right.
So
Right.
I just really, really thought it was just well crafted, no pun intended there. But I really enjoyed it. It also dealt with racism and these outcasts, as you talk about. This is like pre-Columbine and that era, right?
Yeah.
Just right. And that's a few years later, 3 years later. Outcasts are looked at very differently now, but yeah,
Right.
it holds up.
Yeah, you're right. They are looked at differently.
And
Yeah.
I've actually, go on, please.
Yeah, no, I hadn't thought about it. That's true, though. They are that now. Maybe it's not as cool to be an outcast.
Well, they're trying to identify them more now. Like,
Yeah.
hey, who are them? But this, they were like the goth girls, goth kids, and nobody was dealing
Yeah.
with them. They were discarded. But I
Right.
thought it was just brilliant. And again, I'm kind of shocked that there wasn't The Craft 2 because, as you just said, the ending pivoted because the version that we all know, no one dies. One's in an insane asylum, sure. The other two don't have their powers, and our lead does. And her moral compass is a little bit more, centered. But there could have easily been The Craft 2. Were you getting hit up with that?
Briefly, yes. I know the studio had me in and they said, "Hey, we really underestimated what this movie was and what it would do and the way we semi-promoted it, and
I love that they're apologizing to you. That's
and
great.
do you have another idea?" And I had a couple little ideas, but like I don't think I'm good at sequels. I
Right.
really don't.
Yeah.
I feel like somehow or other, and I don't know why. I wish I was. It just kills me that I'm not.
Well,
I
hardly
feel,
anybody else is, Peter, so I wouldn't worry. Only Coppola really nailed it.
yeah, or
So,
Cameron.
or Cameron, although I think Terminator is a superior movie, but yes, it's still a great movie. The
Yeah,
T2.
Terminator 2 I love. But I feel like, I don't know, maybe I sort of leave it on the page the first time and then I write myself into corners I can't get out of. I don't know.
But did you have the opportunity? Were they saying, "Hey, we'll green light The Craft 2 if
No,
you're in"? No, it didn't come to that. Again, it was a
no, it
different time.
wasn't like that. No, it
Okay,
wasn't.
sequels weren't in demand. They weren't looking for, well, this
Not,
was way before episodic and shows and Netflix. So it was a different industry
yeah, it was a bit different.
completely.
And it was different. And a lot of great films, and I don't know that they ever made one, but like, did they ever make a Fly 2? I
They
don't think
did,
so.
and it was
Oh, they
terrible.
did.
Eric
Yeah.
Stoltz. It wasn't Cronenberg, and it's one of
Okay.
the worst sequels out there. Which is kind of funny to go back and see all these like really schlocky bad sequels that existed. Like Short Circuit, kind of cute for the '80s. Short Circuit 2, what happened? Like, how were these things getting greenlit? Which is why I'm asking. Surely they were like, The Craft is great. We can make half of good, make it half as good and make our money. But I love that you just weren't. It wasn't in you. It doesn't sound like it was there.
It's not in me, and honestly, what you say is also the truth. I never wanted to tarnish
Yeah.
the
Right.
originals.
Good.
Like I was like, it's so hard to get one made. It's so hard to get one made that comes out any good. If it does, it's almost like, maybe I felt a little protective of them. I was like, you know what, it stands on its feet. I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
I don't want to futz it up.
Well, speaking of the cast, it was primarily women. It is the main cast. But there is one character who I know, and I had him on the Let's Talk Movies podcast, and that is John Kapelos, who was in movies like The Breakfast Club and Weird Science, Internal Affairs. And on our podcast, he was talking about how he was killed off or died as Ray in the movie. He was fantastic. I love him as a character actor.
Yeah.
But do you have any stories? And I didn't even ask you on Flatliners because there's just so much we could talk about, Peter. But were you on set? Because sometimes writers are like, don't even come near us. But were you on these sets, the Flatliners and the Craft? Were you there?
Flatliners, I was there every day.
Okay,
Joel Schumacher wanted me there,
great.
and uh, that was just my job, um, and it was great. It was really great. It was really my film school. I went to an undergrad program, but never grad school. So Joel
Yeah.
said, he would just have so many Joelisms for me, of you know, it's a privilege to entertain, or the guards at the gate of the studio are not there to keep us in.
Oh, I love it.
And he would just say, someday, you're going to appreciate this opportunity that I'm basically forcing you to be here every day.
Absolutely.
And but he was, in a way, he was wrong, because I did appreciate it.
Yeah,
I
you were
already
all
did.
over it.
I appreciated it every moment, and I absolutely loved it. And I was surrounded by Jan de Bont, an
Oh,
amazing
yeah.
he
Amazing.
who had done The Fourth Man, and Eugenio Zanetti, a production designer who won the Academy Award a year or two later for
Wow.
restoration. And all these amazing actors reading the lines and just making them their own and fleshing out the characters. I mean, it was definitely a master class in cinema filmmaking. And
Was it
and
your
Joel,
line saying that? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
oh no,
Was it your line that this is a good day to die? The Keep from
yeah,
Sutherland line? Oh,
yeah,
that's a good
that's
line.
that old Sioux thing, hoka hey.
Yeah. That
Yeah,
was
today's a good day to die.
great and a great trailer moment. Well, that's cool to know. I've talked to Ben about this as well. Some movies, he's on location. They want him there. They want his input. Like Carl Gottlieb on Jaws. He's living with Spielberg in the shack, also writing the Jaws log on the side, and they're writing the movie as they go. Like, that's what you want. Imagine that experience. And other times, it's like, well, as you know, being a writer, it's like, keep that guy out of here, or keep that guy or girl out of here. So I'm sure you've experienced both of these.
I never experienced keep that guy out
Oh,
of
good,
here,
good.
but thankfully. But I think that the reason is, in cinema, in movies, you have to understand that everybody's there to serve the director.
Right,
He or she has to make the film,
right.
and like, there was a time when I was sort of dragging my heels on some of the changes in the Flatliners script, and Joel very candidly and just said, "Look, you know, you wrote a great script. You sold it for a lot of money. Congratulations. Now I have to make the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I have to see it and make it as much mine as that script is yours.
Yeah,
Otherwise I can't do it. So you can either help me make it mine, or you can get out of here and I'll find some other writer who will help me
yeah.
make it mine."
I get it.
And it was, he was absolutely right. I mean, that's the way it is. So I always see my job, the script is one kid. It's like a parent with two kids, and the
Mm-hmm.
movie's another kid. You love them both for different reasons, but
Right.
my job is to write a great script on page. It moves you, and that's great.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the movie, my job, or the TV movie, or the pilot, not the pilot, because then we're getting into
Yeah. Of
jumping
course.
ahead. We're jumping ahead, but like a TV movie, I did an adaptation of Salem's Lot for TNT, and
Yeah.
with Mikhail Solomon, and always I felt my job was to serve the director and help them dramatize this
Yeah.
thing, because so
That is
so I
the
never
job.
got really tossed.
Okay.
I had
Yeah.
a
And
lesson.
I've just heard horror stories before, but it
Yeah,
sounds
oh,
like
I'm sure.
it's like, oh, thanks for the words. We'll get it from here. It's like, what? How do you not make them part of it? It's good to hear that you've had a different experience in a more
I don't
meaningful
know
way.
why. I don't know why a director would do that unless you really just grated on them, or really made problems.
Yeah.
Like there's so many moving things when you're trying to direct. It's like you don't have time for a problem on that scale.
No.
You know,
No.
you got
There's
so
other
many
things.
questions. It's like I don't need problems. I need help and answers.
Then the Craft Legacy in 2020 comes out. So is it like Flatliners 2017 when Ben Ripley and you communicate? Did someone from the Craft Legacy reach out and communicate when it was going into production or
No,
nothing?
no, no. Nobody reached out at all, and
Okay.
they just uh, at one point nobody reached out. I think we had all like grown so far apart. As you know, I wasn't the final writer on the craft.
Okay.
I wrote it, and then the director Andy Fleming did rewrites.
I saw both names, but I wasn't sure how it broke
Yeah.
down. So that's okay.
So I wasn't, on the set every day of the craft, and so he kind of really, we talked and talked about themes and this and that and scenes, and
Okay.
we were on the same page, and I was really happy because he came from a drama background, with threesome, and I thought
Yeah.
I was confident, just like the producer, that he would do a great job, and he did.
Yeah.
And so he, I think he must have been speaking to uh, Zoe Lister-Jones about the
Okay.
craft legacy. He and Doug Wick, but I wasn't a part of it. I
Okay.
really nothing to do with that film.
I never saw it, so I can't speak to it. But nothing's like the original, Peter. It holds up brilliantly, and I'm saying that I watched it, like I said, 2 weeks ago, and I thought that's why I do the Let's Talk Movies podcast, because yeah, you can go on Netflix and spend an hour deciding what to watch, right? Like that, just the choice alone is tough. So I've been doing a deep dive into older movies or newer movies, and steering people to see things for the first time or revisit them, because often you go back and see where you are in your life. 20
Yeah.
years have passed, 10 years have passed. Was that movie still work for me? Like the movies of the 70s. I'm sure you go back sometimes and watch these movies that you saw in the cinema as a kid, because they're great stories and they're well told. And the craft is among them.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
wow.
And it is funny. You're right. It does bring you back to your own life or where you were,
Yeah.
and who were you sitting with in the movie theater that day or whatever.
It's like a needle drop into your life.
Sure.
Like, oh, wait, yeah, I was with my buddy and we all went over there, and it meant everything to us. So those experiences, you don't
Yeah.
lose them. So
Yeah.
music and movies. Well, I want to pivot to the third, kind of the big three pillars, and then the short film I want to talk about. But this came up. I've not seen it, but I'm really impressed by what I've read and seen. But Chapelwaite, 2021, an Epix show, or show on Epix, I believe. And they had a show called Get Shorty, which was based on the movie a few years ago, which I thought was fantastic. So tell us about this. And you're also co-creating and writing with your brother, right? Jason Filardi.
Yep. 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 Uh, yeah, this was just a great opportunity. Epics. Uh, I had done work with Michael Wright, who is the president of Epics back when he worked at TNT, and I had done a Salem's Lot
Mm-hmm.
uh, show for them, which came out pretty nice, we thought, and did really well for TNT. That had Rob Lowe and James Cromwell and Andre Brower, and just a
Wow.
great cast. And Stephen King really liked it, and he liked it so much, in fact, that he switched from doing his TV movies from ABC to TNT. And so
Yeah.
it started a great relationship, I think, with Michael and Stephen King, and as an offshoot, me.
Wait,
And
have you
then
met Stephen King, by the way? I must ask.
no,
What? Okay.
never.
Okay.
I
All right.
know, I know. I wish
Yet. Yet.
someday,
Okay. Oh, let me bring
someday.
up the poster. Let me bring that poster up there. Boom. There he is, Academy Award winner, Adrian Brody. So please continue, because this is fascinating.
Oh, so originally they wanted my brother and I to come up with like a horror western idea, and we pitched them a bunch, and they were like, I don't think we want to do a horror western anymore, but a producer, Donald DeLine, just came in with the rights to Jerusalem's Lot, the short
Mm.
story. Are you interested in that? And of course, I was immediately like, absolutely. And so
Yeah.
we read it, and we loved it. It's classic Gothic. It's kind of Stephen King's version of the classic Gothic, Bram Stoker,
Mm-hmm.
um, that tradition, the real, the old tradition. And so we developed sort of it was only 30 pages, and so we had to develop a story
Wow.
that was 10 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a fair amount of invention involved,
And
but
it's a period piece, right? It's like the
period piece.
1850s.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what, Jason, this is what you said, how life is. Growing up in Mistick, Connecticut, with the Mistick Seaport and the last surviving Yankee whaling ship, the Charles W. Morgan, I was always, my brother and I were always very interested in whaling and those
Mm-hmm.
stories of these guys and who grew up in our little town and went off to sea for 3 years at a stretch.
Yeah.
And so we made the main character a whaling captain, and it just sort of fit into our New
Yeah.
England mystic wheelhouse. And
Absolutely.
it just suddenly, like, it was our way into the material to connect with it, which, like I told you with directors, it's important that even though we're adapting Stephen King's thing, we have to figure out a way that our hearts can kind of sync up with his.
So if you haven't met Stephen, is he looking at your work? Is he involved at all in this? Because,
Yeah,
it's okay.
yeah, he did. He had to approve all the drafts and approve the pilot before we could go forward. Absolutely. Yeah, he
Well, this
puts
is
his
very
heart.
surreal for you. Like, just
Yeah.
like, what
Well,
the
you feel like
heck?
you're writing for an audience of one. Um,
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
and but he
Wow.
yeah, he liked it. He really liked it. And then he liked the series. He tweeted really positive, nice things about it, and
Wow.
he it was just it was really great. Like when he does something like that for me,
Yeah.
that's like an Academy Award.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've already, been involved with him. You are working with Stephen King, which is just like, wow. Think back to you going to the movie theater, reading Stephen King, reading Salem's Lot. It all comes full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is amazing. So it has to be very gratifying, not just for Stephen King, but you're working with your brother, which I'm assuming you
Yep.
guys have probably collaborated over the years, but now his name's also on this, and you guys are, well, you finished one season. I was like, oh, 2021, but then I read, if I'm not mistaken, it was renewed for a second season. Is that correct?
Well, it looked like it was, but
Oh,
they'd only signed Adrian Brody to a 1 year deal. And
okay.
so after Chapelwaite, he kind of got pretty hot again. And he
Oh,
did Winning Time for
mm-hmm.
HBO, and he did a couple movies. And we wrote a pilot, a season 2 episode. And he was like, you know what, guys, I've kind of moved on. I want to do
Oh, my.
something else. So we have reconceptualized the series, I think, wonderfully, with no spoiler alert, but the main character would be Adrian Brody's grandson, and it will be set in
Interesting.
the 20s.
Go back. Prequel. Nice.
No sequel, because
Oh,
after the
oh, you said
1850s,
1920s. Oh, okay. Sorry.
yeah, 1920s.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Wow.
I think it's great. I think it's a great script. I think it's really action packed and scary, and I mean, I think it's really has a lot of potential to attract another great actor. So
So there is going to be a second season. It just might, it's going to be different.
that's our hope. Yes,
Oh, that's exciting. I was going to
we're,
say, if he was out in the story, go on.
we're in the middle of a strike, so
Well,
hopefully,
no, there's that. There is that. But I was going to say, if that story ended, I do love at least the first two seasons of what Fargo, the movie's iconic. Okay, yeah,
right.
Coen Brothers. But the series, season 1 and season 2, I was floored by, and the way they were just seasons were just kind of self-contained. I don't know if you saw it or not, but I was like, you could also go that route, like, oh, let's just do another story in this world. But it sounds like you'll just take it ahead in time, which is
Exactly.
great as well.
That is what we're doing.
I
Yeah.
love it, man. Well,
It,
good luck with that. I'm going to have to watch it. I was going to try to cram through this before we met. And I was like, well, that's going to be tough. But the trailer looks great. And I love a good period piece if you can execute on that and you have the production and you have the talent. I mean, this guy,
Adrian Brody's
unreal.
fantastic, and he looks so much like a haunted New England whaling captain. I mean, he is, and he's just great. I mean, he to be on the set with him every day and watch him work and watch and how generous he was with the other actors
Yeah,
and and it, you as a showrunner in television, you're not directing, but you're a lot closer to directing.
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, the directors come in, they do 2 episodes, and they leave.
But
And
you're the steady. You're there. You're guiding the ship. Totally. They're leaning in on you. They're leaning into you. They need your guidance. Yeah, that's got to be a great experience. And then you're with your brother. I just think it's so cool. There's probably like a really fun set, at least in my mind.
it is. My brother's very funny, and
Okay.
he comes from a comedy background. He did 17 again with Zac Efron, and
Oh yeah.
Bringing Down the House with Steve Martin and Queen Latifah.
Wow.
So he
As an
is
actor or
no
as a
writer. He's
he's the writer. Sorry. Okay.
9 years younger than me, and he
Gosh.
came up and started doing comedies. But now, he loves horror too, and we've always sort of skirted around the idea of working together. And then uh, we sold one feature script that didn't get made, but then
Okay.
this opportunity came up and we did it together, and it was a blast. It
Oh,
was
it's amazing. Well, with your
that.
sensibilities, with the comedy and the horror aspect, I can't help but think one of my favorite movies of all time was An American Werewolf in London. Sometimes if you blend those two things, horror and comedy, you get gold, right? So
Yeah.
I'm sure that you guys have many more things ahead. Post writer strike, of course. Of course.
Yeah,
We got to
hopefully
get
so.
we got to get through these, but you've been through a few of them, Peter. So
I have.
you're a steady force in the industry. Well,
I'm
that's great to hear.
survivor.
Are you a survivor? Well, I don't want to take up forever because I could take up a lot of your time, but let's pivot let's bring it back to the Mystic Film Festival. So last year, there's a short film, Hazardous, 2022, a 17-minute short. I was there helping the festival last year with logistics and also was the MC and just getting to know people because, as you said, I'm new to town and you want to kind of meet others that work in entertainment, and it's not LA where you can just walk outside. It's like everybody, hey, yeah, what are you working on? So I wanted to be a part of the community, meet people like I do here in Rhode Island as well. But this short played to a full house, like the big screen at the Mistick Luxury Cinemas, and it was a raucous crowd. So, and then you directed this. So, how did that come about? How did you like pivot and say, "Oh, I'll just do this short film. It'll be fun." Was this a collaboration with your brother, or was it
No,
just
this was I came back from Canada. I had to go away for 6 months to shoot Chapelwaite,
okay?
and it was during COVID. So then I came back to Connecticut, and COVID was still going on, and I was standing around the dog park in my town, and in Connecticut, and met an actor who had just moved from New York, Roger Clark, who plays Arthur Morgan in the mega hit Red Dead Redemption 2 video
Oh,
game.
yeah, the video games, right?
So he is a superstar in the gaming world.
Yeah.
He signs autographs. He has 225,000 followers or something. I mean, he's big, and he has this great voice and look about him. And I was just talking, and our dogs got along fine. And so I said, "Man, we should do something together." And so he's like, "Yes, of course." And so I just went home and wrote something, and he liked it, and we recruited a bunch of wildly, you know, we kind of live outside of New Haven a little now,
Okay.
and but I recruited this bunch of wildly overqualified professionals who work in Mistick and in Rhode Island and all around, mostly in commercials and
Yeah.
industrials. Doug Lively is and Alec Aston, a producer,
Oh
and
yeah, I know
they're all,
Alec well. He's great.
yeah, all these really talented local people, and it was fun and just sort of pieced together this team and um, and we shot this thing and I mean one of my producers was a pharmaceutical executive who just always had an interest in movies and
That's
wanted to help
great.
me. And he ended up finding me
Yeah,
locations
you can
and
use my house, whatever. I love it.
so it was a real grassroots type of thing, and it just I was inspired to do it because when I did Chapelwaite, all writers want to direct to some degree,
Sure.
and I had seen what five different directors did with the exact same tools. They would come
Hmm.
up and they would have the same sets, basically
Yeah.
the same cast, different scripts, same budget. Usually, oftentimes, same DPs. We rotated two DPs. So, but you got to see what five different directors did with the tools given them,
Yeah, that's
and
interesting.
it was really inspiring. It was really you could see, you know, the energy you feel from a creative shot versus standard coverage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dropping the camera, 5 inches or raising it 5 inches. Just different the energy you can infuse into the story by being a bit more mindful. And I learned tricks from them too, like when you're staging the direct actors, if they're gonna have them stand next to a window, the DPs love that. And it's true, because the
Yeah.
window, the light comes
Hmm.
in, it makes a hard shot. It's like,
Yeah.
just tons of little tidbits on set, And I
And
said, oh, I really want to do it again. I want to direct something. So we put it together.
it's awesome.
We put it in a few festivals. We won a few awards. It was a great excuse. It was a real learning experience for a lot of people
Hmm.
involved, and myself included. And we're gearing up to do another one. They all want it. Now it's 2 years later already, my God, and they want to do another one. So,
Wow. Well, this
uh,
one is here's the synopsis for those who do not know, and it is available online. But smoking may be hazardous to Roger's health, but treating him with hypnosis can be deadly. I watched it. It's hilarious. It's also just well done, spooky. There's so much going on, and that's the good thing about a short film. Experiment with a short film where you can do it. You have the time, you have the energy. It's not about Hollywood and getting distribution. And like you say, it can galvanize a team. You can work on things. I think it's a perfect place to do these types of exercises. And it's great because you can play festivals. And yes, you did win awards, but I know one award you won in particular was at the Mistick Film Festival. You won the Grand Jury Prize for Narrative Short. So congratulations, Peter.
thank you. And you can see that film on YouTube at
Yeah,
Hazard.
yeah,
Just do a search for Hazardous short movie or something.
Hazardous. Yeah, that's
Find it.
exactly right. Um, well,
But
I'm
yeah,
actually, are
I
you
was
going to do Hazardous too? Sorry, I didn't mean to. Go ahead.
Oh no, this next one is total another.
Okay.
I told you I'm terrible at
No,
sequels.
that's what I thought. I was like, is he going to do another one? Like, no, so it's got to be fresh. It's got to be something
And
new.
I can't get my head around sequels. I don't know why.
That's like most people miss it too. So again, you're in the norm there. Well, that's exciting. Same thing, short film, small
Yep.
crew. Okay.
Yep, and I'm waiting for the strike to end to go up back to Canada to do another TV movie for MGM Plus. It'll be sort of
Nice.
another vampire story. So I just got to wait for the strike to end for that. So hopefully I can squeeze in the short before we leave.
Yeah, there you go. Well, hopefully you'll make it out to the film festival this year, the Mystic Film Festival this year,
Oh,
which is coming up in October.
every
As you
year,
probably.
every year I can, I will.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
I love the programmers and Shireen Anderson who runs it.
hmm
I love the venue, and you know, I love doing Q&As and helping. anybody who's interested, anybody who wants some pointers, I'm happy to share. So it's a fun event.
Well, you shared a ton today, Peter. Like anybody in the entertainment industry or wants to learn about filmmaking or wants to learn about this, that, and the other, you really covered it. I thought we'd go an hour, but hey, the good ones, we go longer. And I appreciate your time. You've been fantastic to get to know and talk with. I do have a couple questions because we were mowing through things and there's things I missed, of course, but your dad's beer company. It wasn't Narragansett Beer, was it?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, no, no. He's was a beer distributor for
Okay.
Schaefer and Schlitz.
Schaefer and Schlitz. Oh my gosh, iconic.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
iconic for sure. That's New England, and
well, I just discovered, and this is me growing up in Oklahoma and then spending another part of my life, a big chunk in California. I just discovered around here because I see these signs for Narragansett beer. I never knew what Narragansett was, and now, of course, I live next to it. And that's the beer that Quint's drinking. It's like, that blew my mind, Peter. I just learned that as I became
right,
a New Englander. Crush it
right,
like Quint. I'm like, of course, it's so obvious, but I didn't know it was a thing.
right,
So
right.
I love that. Very proud of that. They're very proud of their history, as they should be in
As they should
Jaws.
be. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that's great.
You've
And
landed in a great part of the country.
I sure have. I'm very fortunate. There's no joke, and it's not lost on me. And the director from A Mystic Pizza was Donald Petrie, I guess is how you
Yeah,
pronounce his name. So I just
yeah,
wanted to, earlier I didn't have it. I just wanted to give a shout out there. And
yeah.
well, thank you so much, Peter. I'm going to do a quick send off to our sponsors again and say goodbye, but hang with me. Anything else you want to leave us with, though? Any other tidbit, words of wisdom?
No, I guess not. I guess not. All I can say is it's been a great journey so far, and I feel like I've been able to try so many different aspects of movies, whether it was, you know, episodic television, made for TV movies, or mini series, feature films, studio level, independent, shorts. So I mean, I feel like I feel very lucky and very, as Joel Schumacher would say, it's a privilege to entertain, and it's really been a
Yeah.
joy.
Yeah, that's great. Well, maybe you'll come back and do a part two, or check in with us later as the podcast grows. We would love that if you grace us
Great.
with your presence. So,
Oh,
so thank you. Hang tight. Let me just do this real quick, and we'll sign off.
okay.
So again, I want to thank our sponsors, especially the Old Mystic Village, which Peter's quite fond of. And be sure to check out the Taste of Mystic, which is returning to the Old Mystic Village from September 8th through the 10th. So friends and families, be sure to join the 50th anniversary event featuring tastings from over 20 restaurants, a beer tent, and live bands all weekend. Please visit oldmysticvillage.com and click events. And lastly, the Mystic Aquarium. Check it out. It's where Jason Filardi used to work. That's the slogan, I think. So very good. Well, thank you again, Peter. Thank you so very much. Good luck with everything, and I will see you soon. Hopefully we'll meet at the festival. That would be great.
Awesome. That'd be great, Jason. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye bye.